Hey there. For almost as long as there has been a China, its rulers have been struggling to control this vast, sparsely populated territory in the far northwest. The Chinese call this area Xinjiang, which can be roughly translated as frontier or borderlands, but it has been known by many other names in many other languages. Thanks to modern technology and wealth, the Chinese may have finally found a way to control the Uyghur population by turning Xinjiang into a dystopia that seems more science fiction than reality. Today we'll be talking about what's going on and why it matters. Many commenters have criticized me for taking this long to cover this topic, and they are absolutely right. At its best, this channel is about challenging the powerful, and that most often means going against the U.S. government, the most powerful entity on this planet. When Washington, D.C. and Beijing get into it, Beijing is still very much the underdog, so I do tend to take their side. I don't apologize for that, but that doesn't mean that I should ignore it when China does bad things. And make no mistake, what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs in Xinjiang is horrific. The suffering of Xinjiang is similar in some ways to what China is doing to Tibet. So similar that the Chinese government official who is turning Uyghur life into a sci-fi hellscape earned his position by doing the same job in Tibet. Tibet gets a lot more attention internationally, which is surprising because it is a lot less important on almost every measure. There are far fewer people to worry about in Tibet, for one thing. For another, Xinjiang shares borders with 8 countries and is the launching pad for many of the land-based sections of China's One Belt, One Road initiative. Tibet has some interesting borders, but it also has these honking big mountains that make it both super defensible and not a very practical place for new transport infrastructure. I think the main thing is that the Tibetans aren't Muslim, while the Uyghurs are, which means that the Tibetans get a lot of international sympathy and the Uyghurs don't. It's screwed up, but that is what it is. China is now enjoying what is probably its longest unbroken period of control of Xinjiang. They've been the most powerful country in the region since the 1750s or so, but they've rarely gone more than a couple decades before losing control of Xinjiang to a Turkic prince or the Soviet Union or just some petty Chinese warlord. The Chinese Communist Party is now working hard to make sure that they never lose Xinjiang again. Between the last reconquest of Xinjiang in 1949 and the end of the Soviet Union, China had to be more solicitous of the native Uyghur population. Don't get me wrong, it was still authoritarian as all hell, but the Soviets and the Chinese had a bit of a competition going to see who could be better to their subject nations in Central Asia. That's why the official name of the province is still the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Province. After 1992 and the fall of the Soviet Union, this stopped mattering as much. And after 2001, China was handed the perfect tool to use against the Muslim Uyghur people. All they had to do to get away with cultural genocide was call them terrorists. Between 2001 and 2016, the Chinese slowly ratcheted up the pressure on the Uyghurs. They are no longer a majority in their own province. Members of China's Han majority have been migrating to Xinjiang for quite some time now, but China's economic miracle over the past couple decades has sent the migration into overdrive. It is basically what the U.S. did to the Native Americans, taking place in what is supposedly our more civilized era. Just like the indigenous people oppressed by the United States, Uyghurs can make themselves safer by conspicuously abandoning their culture and assimilating to the Chinese mainstream. A small handful of Uyghurs went all the way in the other direction and carried out a few horrifying attacks against Chinese civilians. These counterproductive actions, of course, just provided political cover for Chinese repression, which has been out of all proportion to the small handful of attacks that have taken place. By 2016, the Chinese were already engaged in a systematic program of dismantling traditional Muslim life. They were tearing down mosques in traditional neighborhoods and forbidding Muslim men from growing their beards. And then things got a lot worse. In August of 2016, Chen Quanguo showed up and he brought the repressive system he had pioneered in Tibet. At its heart is a massive expansion of policing and police stations. In urban areas, there is now a mini police station every 500 meters or so. According to the Jamestown Foundation, there is now a police station for every 300 people in Xinjiang, or roughly one police station for every 150 Uyghurs. In his first year in office, Quanguo added almost 100,000 new policing jobs. Surveillance is constant and mandatory. Beyond the absurdly inflated police forces, informing on one's neighbors is encouraged, and Uyghurs are regularly required to surrender their phones and other devices for intelligence analysis. And that's not the worst bit. I am a huge opponent of mass incarceration in the United States. For years, one of my favorite arguments against it was to point out that the United States had more people in prison than China. I'm not talking proportionally, I'm talking in raw numbers. The U.S. had more people locked up than China, a totalitarian country 4 times our size. That was one of my go-to arguments against U.S. mass incarceration, and it is almost certainly no longer true. In just the past 2 years, it is estimated that the number of Uyghurs that have been detained indefinitely has grown to almost 1 million. We don't have exact numbers on this, of course, though we do know from satellite imagery that new re-education camps have been cropping up all over Xinjiang province. And it seems like every Uyghur has a family member or multiple family members that have disappeared. We need to be honest about what these camps are. They are concentration camps. Now, I'm not saying that they are as bad as Nazi death camps or the famine and disease-ridden concentration camps that the British set up all over Africa. This is not yet a genocide or a world historical tragedy, but it absolutely could be. All of the components are there. The question is, what should we do about this? The diplomatic steps Western governments have taken are to be applauded. We need to bring attention to this loudly and repeatedly. But I think we need to tread carefully. I think we need to ask why it is that China felt emboldened enough to arrest as much as 10% of the Uyghur population over the past 2 years. Condemnation is good. Calling their behavior barbaric is good. Embarrassing China on this issue is good. But open conflict would not be good. Yep, you guessed it. I'm about to blame Donald Trump. But not just Donald Trump. Over the past couple of years, all of Washington, D.C. has banded together to go after China much more aggressively. In 2016, as Trump and his anti-China rhetoric ran for and then won the White House, Chen Quanguo moved to Xinjiang and stepped up arrests. In October 2018, after a year of escalating trade war rhetoric, China stopped bothering to deny the existence of these concentration camps. Heightened conflict between China and the United States has not been good for the Uyghurs. Let's lean into Godwin's law by ending this discussion with the Nazis. A little appreciated fact is that they needed World War II to fully become the monsters we remember. They were always disgusting, brutal, anti-Semitic thugs, but in the 1930s, many or even most of the people put in concentration camps got to go home after being brutalized for a period of weeks or months. It was only in the context of World War II and the complete breakdown of civilized society that the Nazis were able to build out their industrial system of extermination. The situation with the Uyghurs is nowhere near that bad, but again, all of the components are there. Escalating conflict between China and the United States will bring those components closer together. To save the Uyghurs, we need to embarrass China, not fight China. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And if you'd like a free essay on a completely different topic, I suggest you click on the link here to sign up for my email list. Thanks.